All right, so today we are going to take a deep dive into threat hunting.
Sounds good.
And you've given us some fascinating sources to work with,
Yes.
really interesting stuff. So we're going to kind of try to figure out
Okay.
who these threat hunters are, what they do every day,
hmm
and how they measure their success. That's what we're diving into today, the world of threat hunting.
Yeah. It's a fascinating shift, from just reacting to attacks to proactively seeking them out.
Right. Like instead of waiting for the alarm to go off, you're actively searching for intruders who might have already gotten past your defenses.
Right.
We've got a stack of sources here.
Yeah.
Articles, blog posts, even a glimpse into the daily life of a threat hunter.
Wow.
And our mission is to figure out what threat hunting really,
Yeah.
how it works, and whether it's something you should be thinking about for your own digital world.
I think what's interesting is that threat hunting operates under the assumption that your network has already been compromised. It's
Wow.
not if, but when and where the attackers are hiding.
That's a little unsettling, right? To think that someone could be in your system right now snooping around.
Yeah.
So let's start with the basics. What exactly is threat hunting?
So at its core, threat hunting is the proactive search for cyber threats that have evaded traditional security measures.
So,
It's about actively seeking out those hidden threats in your network and eliminating them before they can do any real damage.
so it's not just about setting traps and waiting for the bad guys to fall into them.
Right.
It's about going out and finding them.
Exactly. Think of it like this.
Okay.
Traditional security is like having a burglar alarm, right? It goes off when someone tries to break in.
Right.
Threat hunting is like having a detective who is constantly looking for clues,
Uh-huh.
analyzing patterns, and trying to predict the burglar's next move before they even make it.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do you even begin to hunt for threats? It seems like searching for a needle in a haystack.
Well, it's not quite random searching.
No.
There's a method to the madness. One of the sources, Threat Hunting Series, the basics. It outlines a 6-step process that threat hunters typically follow.
Ooh, a step-by-step guide. I love those.
Yeah.
Let's break it down.
Okay, so the first step is establishing a hypothesis.
Okay.
And this is where you use your knowledge of attacker techniques, threat intelligence, and your understanding of your own network to come up with an idea of what kind of attack might be happening.
So, for instance, you might hypothesize that attackers are using a specific type of malware to steal credentials from your users.
Exactly. And once you have that hypothesis, the next step is to establish evidence.
Okay.
This means researching that specific attack, understanding how it works, what its digital fingerprints are, and, if necessary, even emulating the attack in a controlled environment to see how it behaves.
So it's like a detective gathering clues before they even go to the crime scene.
Precisely. The third step is identifying sources.
Yeah.
Where might you find evidence of this attack? Network traffic logs, process execution logs, authentication logs. You need to know where to look for those digital breadcrumbs.
Right, because you can't find something if you're looking in the wrong place.
Absolutely. Once you've identified your sources, the next step is to pinpoint specific fields within those sources that might contain the evidence you're looking for.
Okay.
So if you're looking for signs of that malware, you might focus on fields related to file hashes, IP addresses, or process names.
Okay, so it's about narrowing down your search, getting more specific.
Exactly. And then comes the fifth step, the heavy lifting, querying the data.
Go.
This involves writing searches using tools designed to sift through massive amounts of data looking for those telltale signs.
So you're not just manually scrolling through endless logs.
Not unless you want to spend the rest of your life doing that.
Right.
There are specialized tools that can help you automate this process, but you still need to know how to use them effectively, how to craft the right queries to find what you're looking for.
That sounds pretty technical.
It definitely requires a certain level of technical expertise.
Okay.
But don't worry, we'll dive into the skills and knowledge you need to become a threat hunter a little later.
Okay.
For now, let's finish up this process.
Okay.
The final step is analyzing the data. Once you've got your search results, you have to make sense of them, look for patterns, and identify any anomalies that might indicate a real threat.
So you've sifted through all this data, found some potential clues.
Yeah.
How do you know if they're actually pointing to a real threat?
That's where your analytical skills, your ability to connect the dots, and your understanding of attacker techniques really come into play.
Yeah.
It's like being a detective piecing together the pieces of a puzzle,
Uh-huh.
trying to figure out what happened, who did it, and how they did it.
Okay, so this whole process, hypothesizing, gathering evidence, analyzing data, it sounds pretty intense.
It can be, but it's also incredibly rewarding. Imagine uncovering a hidden threat that no one else knew about, stopping an attack before it can do any damage.
Yeah.
That's the power of threat hunting. And it's like, and you know what's really cool?
Yeah.
There's this concept called threat emulation that can really help prepare you for the hunt.
Threat emulation. What's that?
Imagine this. You're playing chess, right?
Okay.
But instead of waiting for your opponent to make a move, you try to anticipate their strategy by practicing different scenarios beforehand.
Uh-huh.
Threat emulation is kind of like that.
Oh.
It's about proactively recreating attacks in a controlled environment to see how they play out, what kind of evidence they leave behind, and what your defenses can pick up.
So you're basically playing the role of the attacker
Right.
to see how well your defenses hold up.
Precisely. And this practice can give you a huge advantage when you're hunting for real-world threats. It's like studying your opponent's playbook before the big game.
That's brilliant. But where do you even begin with something like that?
Well, luckily, one of the sources, Threat Hunting series, using threat emulation for threat hunting, dives into the nuts and bolts of setting up a threat emulation environment.
Okay.
It even provides resources for building your own lab, from pre-made setups to step-by-step guides.
So if I wanted to try this out, I could actually build my own little hacking playground.
Absolutely. It's like having your own digital dojo where you can spar with simulated threats and sharpen your hunting skills.
I like that.
But even with all the technical tools and techniques, threat hunting is still very much a human-driven process.
You mean it's not just about running automated scans and letting the computers do all the work?
Exactly. It takes a skilled analyst with a keen eye for detail and the ability to think like an attacker to truly be successful.
Okay, so let's talk about the human element. What does it actually take to become a threat hunter?
Well, one of the sources, Threat Hunting series, What Makes a Good Threat Hunter, does a fantastic job of breaking down the core competencies.
Okay.
Analytical prowess is key here. A good threat hunter needs to be able to spot patterns, connect the dots, and draw conclusions from seemingly disparate pieces of information.
So it's like being a digital Sherlock Holmes, piecing together clues to solve a cyber mystery.
Absolutely. But it's not just about intuition and guesswork. You also need a solid understanding of systems networks and how they work. A deep knowledge of attacker techniques, tools, and methodologies is crucial.
So you're not just learning about defense, you're learning
Right.
about offense as well.
Exactly. You need to understand how attackers think, what their goals are, and how they might try to achieve them. And speaking of, offense experience in red teaming can be incredibly valuable for a threat hunter.
Red teaming, that sounds intense.
It is, but in a good way.
Okay.
Red teaming involves simulating real-world attacks to test an organization's defenses. It's like having a friendly sparring partner who helps you identify weaknesses and improve your security posture.
So it's like having your own personal team of ethical hackers.
Exactly. And the experience you gain from red teaming can give you a huge advantage when you're hunting for real threats. You'll have a deeper understanding of how attackers operate, what tactics they use, and what vulnerabilities they might target.
That makes sense. So analytical skills, technical knowledge, red teaming experience. It sounds like you need a pretty diverse skill set to be a threat hunter.
You do, but it's not just about technical chops. Communication skills are also incredibly important.
Communication, why is that so important?
Well, imagine you've just uncovered a sophisticated attack that's been hiding in your network for months.
Okay.
You've got all the technical details, the logs, the evidence.
Yeah.
But if you can't explain it to your boss or your team in a clear and concise way, they're not going to understand the severity of the threat or the actions they need to take to mitigate it.
So it's not just about finding the threats.
Right.
It's about communicating them effectively so that action can be taken.
Exactly. A good threat hunter needs to be able to translate complex technical information into plain English, to write compelling reports, and to present their findings in a way that's engaging and persuasive.
Okay, I'm starting to see that being a threat hunter is much more than just being a techie who knows how to use a few tools. It's about having a unique blend of technical skills, analytical thinking, and communication abilities.
You got it. It's about being a problem solver, a critical thinker, and a storyteller all rolled into one.
Wow, this is fascinating.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, are there different approaches to threat hunting? I mean, is there a standard playbook or does it vary depending on the situation?
That's a great question. And luckily we have a source that dives into just that. What is cyber threat hunting? Complete Guide by Exabeam.
Okay.
It breaks down the main types of threat hunting methodologies, each with its own strengths and weaknesses.
Okay, let's hear it. What are these different approaches?
The first one is called structured hunting.
Okay.
It's a very systematic approach, kind of like following a recipe.
Mhm.
You start with a specific known threat in mind, maybe based on a threat intelligence report or a vulnerability alert, and you systematically search for specific indicators of that threat in your environment.
So if you get a report about a new ransomware variant that's targeting your industry, you would use structured hunting to look for specific signs of that ransomware in your systems.
Exactly. You'd be looking for known indicators of compromise, like specific file hashes, IP addresses, or domain names associated with that ransomware. It's like having a wanted poster and going door to door looking for a specific suspect.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But what if you don't have a specific suspect in mind? What if you're just looking for anything suspicious?
That's where unstructured hunting comes in.
Okay.
It's much more exploratory and intuition-driven.
Okay.
Instead of starting with a specific threat, you start with a hypothesis about a potential attack vector or a high-risk area of your network, and you dig in looking for anything unusual or out of place.
So it's less about following a checklist and more about trusting your gut.
Exactly. It's like being a detective in a film noir, walking the dark alleys looking for clues and following your hunches. It's often through unstructured hunting that we uncover completely new threats, things that hadn't been seen before and don't have any known indicators.
So structured hunting is about finding the known unknowns.
Right.
And unstructured hunting is about finding the unknown unknowns.
That's a great way to put it. And then there's situational hunting. This approach is all about context. You focus your efforts on specific events or entities that might be attractive to attackers.
So for example, if your company is going through a merger or acquisition,
Right.
you might ramp up your threat hunting efforts.
Yeah.
Because you know that attackers often target companies during periods of transition.
Exactly. Or if you have a high-value asset like a server containing sensitive customer data, you might focus your hunting efforts there because you know it's a prime target for attackers.
It's about understanding the attacker's motivations and focusing your efforts where they're most likely to strike.
Precisely. It's like a game of chess where you're trying to anticipate your opponent's next move based on the current state of the board.
So we've got structured, unstructured, and situational hunting. Is there a best approach, or does it depend on the specific circumstances?
It absolutely depends on the situation. Each approach has its strengths and weaknesses, and the best approach for you will depend on your organization's specific threat landscape, your resources, and your goals.
So it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Not at all. And in many cases, the most effective approach is a hybrid approach combining elements of all three methodologies to create a tailored strategy that fits your specific needs.
So it's about being flexible, adaptable, and using the right tool for the job.
Precisely. And that's where the expertise and judgment of the threat hunter really come into play.
Okay.
Being able to analyze the situation, assess the risks, and choose the most effective approach is crucial.
Okay, so we've got a good grasp on the different methodologies. But how do we know if our threat hunting efforts are actually working? Are there specific metrics we should be tracking?
That's a crucial question, and luckily one of your sources, Threat Hunting Metrics, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, digs deep into this very topic.
Perfect. Let's talk metrics. What are some good ones to focus on?
Well, first and foremost, you want to focus on metrics that show actual impact. One of those is data source coverage. Are you collecting data from all the right places to have full visibility of your environment?
Right, because you can't hunt for threats if you're missing crucial pieces of the puzzle.
Exactly. Another key metric is new detections submitted. How many new ways to catch attackers have you discovered through your hunts?
So it's not just about finding existing threats. It's about proactively developing new ways to detect future threats.
Precisely. And then there's mean time to detection, or MTTD. This measures how quickly you're finding threats and how you can improve that speed.
Because the faster you can detect a threat, the less damage it can do.
Exactly. But it's also important to be mindful of metrics that can be misleading or don't tell the whole story. One example is time spent hunting. Longer hunts don't necessarily mean better results.
Yeah.
You could spend days chasing a ghost, while a more targeted approach might have uncovered a real threat in minutes.
So it's not about how much time you spend, it's about how effectively you use that time.
Exactly. And another potentially misleading metric is the number of reports generated. Quantity over quality is a trap. A single insightful report is worth more than a dozen superficial ones.
So it's not about busy work, it's about results.
Exactly. And then there are the ugly metrics, the ones that can actually harm your threat hunting program, leading to burnout and encouraging the wrong behaviors.
Oh no. What are those?
One of the biggest culprits is hunt count per hunter.
Okay.
This metric incentivizes rushing through hunts just to boost numbers, sacrificing quality and thoroughness in the process.
It's like rewarding quantity over quality, which is never a good recipe for success.
Exactly. Another ugly metric is queries run. This simply measures activity, not effectiveness.
Right.
You could run 1,000 queries and find nothing, while a single well-crafted query might uncover a critical threat.
So it's not about how much data you churn through. It's about how intelligently you analyze it.
Precisely. And that's why it's so crucial to choose the right metrics, the metrics that actually reflect the impact of your threat hunting program.
Because what you measure is what you prioritize.
Mm-hmm.
If you're measuring the wrong things, you'll end up chasing the wrong goal.
Exactly. And that can lead to a lot of wasted time, effort, and resources.
Okay, this has been incredibly insightful. I'm starting to see how crucial threat hunting is in today's world.
It's not just crucial, it's essential. The threat landscape is constantly evolving, and traditional security measures are simply not enough anymore.
So what you're saying is that relying solely on firewalls and antivirus is like locking your front door but leaving all your windows open.
Exactly. You need a proactive approach, a way to actively hunt down those threats that have already bypassed your perimeter defenses.
And threat hunting is that approach.
Precisely. It's about shifting from a reactive to a proactive mindset, from being a victim to being a hunter.
It's about taking control of your security and not just waiting for the next attack to happen.
Exactly. And that's a powerful shift in mindset.
You know, it's one thing to talk about the technical aspects of threat hunting, but I'm curious about the human side of it.
Yeah.
You know, what's it actually like to be a threat hunter?
Well, one of the sources gives us a fascinating glimpse into that world.
Oh, yeah? Which one?
Behind the scenes. The daily grind of a threat hunter. It's a blog post by a seasoned threat hunter.
Okay.
And it's surprisingly honest about the mental and emotional demands of the job. You know, it's not just about technical skills. It takes a certain kind of personality to thrive in this field.
What do you mean?
Well, threat hunting can be pretty intense. You're constantly dealing with complex data, trying to outsmart sophisticated attackers, and the stakes are high. You need to be able to handle pressure, stay focused, and not get discouraged when you hit roadblocks.
So it's not for the faint of heart.
Definitely not. The author of that blog post talks about the importance of resilience, perseverance, and a passion for the work.
Okay.
You have to be the kind of person who enjoys solving puzzles, who gets a thrill from the hunt, and who's driven by the desire to protect others.
It sounds like you need a certain level of paranoia, too.
Maybe a little bit, but it's a healthy paranoia, a constant awareness of the threats that are out there, and a determination to stay one step ahead.
So it's not just a job, it's a calling.
In many ways it is. The author also talks about the ethical considerations that come with threat hunting. You're often dealing with sensitive information, and you have to make judgments about what to investigate further, what to report, and how to balance security needs with user privacy.
That's a heavy responsibility.
It is, but it's also what makes threat hunting so important. It's not just about protecting data, it's about protecting people.
That brings us back to our original question. What if, instead of just reacting, you could go on the offense against cyber threats? What if you could become the hunter, not the hunted? Is that really possible for anyone?
Absolutely. Threat hunting gives you that power. It's about taking control, being proactive, and anticipating the attacker's moves before they even make them. It's about being the guardian of your digital domain.
That's a powerful image. But as we've discussed, it's not easy. It requires a unique blend of skills, knowledge, and dedication. It's not something you can just pick up overnight.
True. But for those who are drawn to this challenge, for those who have the passion and the drive to make a real difference, threat hunting can be an incredibly rewarding career.
It's about being on the front lines, protecting our digital world from those who would seek to exploit it. It's about being a protector, a force for good.
And it's about constantly learning, evolving, and adapting to the ever-changing threat landscape. It's about always being one step ahead, always thinking, always analyzing, always hunting.
So for those of you listening who are intrigued by this world, who might be considering a career in threat hunting, what would you say?
I'd say dive in. Explore the resources we've talked about today. There are books, articles, online courses, even podcasts that can help you learn more about this fascinating field. And remember, threat hunting is not just about technology, it's about mindset. It's about being curious, being skeptical, and always asking, what if?
It's about never taking security for granted, always pushing the boundaries and always striving to be better, to be smarter, to be more secure.
Because in the world of cyber threats, complacency is not an option. We have to be vigilant, we have to be proactive, and we have to be relentless in our pursuit of security.
Because the future of our digital world depends on it.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of threat hunting.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the basics of what threat hunting is to the skills and knowledge you need to become a threat hunter. We've explored different hunting methodologies, talked about the importance of metrics, and even gotten a glimpse into the daily life of a threat hunter.
Hopefully you found it informative, engaging, and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
And if you're feeling ready to embark on your own threat hunting journey, remember those resources we mentioned. There's a whole community of threat hunters out there who are eager to share their knowledge and experience.
So until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and happy hunting.